Okay, the lesson which we are going to discuss it is niches and community interaction. Niches and community interaction, page 99. Lesson we have 4.2. Okay. What is niches? What are niches and community interaction? Who can tell me about the niches? Niches are places in which organisms are living, and interactions, how the organisms are interacting with each other. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to differentiate or define niches. You can describe the role of competition play in shaping communities, and you can describe the rules predations and herbivory play in shaping the community. So these all points you will be able to distinguish, to elaborate. Identify the three types of symbiotic relationship in the natures. You can also identify the three types of symbiotic relationship in the nature. Now the first point which we are going to discuss, it is about the niches. What are niches? The range of physical and biological condition in which a species live, and the way the species what it need to survive and reproduce. Niches, you can say in a simple word, that niche is or the surrounding on the place or the habitat in which the organism are living, in which they are reproducing, right, and in which they are surviving. All these things are what? All these things we count into what? Into clear? The range of physical and biological condition in which a species live, in the way the species what it needs to survive and reproduce. Definition, defining a biological niches according to okay. Define the niche. Describing species address still only part of its stories. Define niches mean a niche is described not only what an organism does, but also how it interacts with biotic and abiotic factors in the environment. Niches is not only what the organism are doing, right? But it is also the interaction between biotic factors and how the organism is going to interact with the biotic factors and abiotic factors. Describing species or address tell only a part of its story. Ecologists also study a species ecological occupations, where and how it makes a living, then how an organism and where an organism is living. This idea of occupation is encompassed in the idea of an organism niche, right? A place where they are living, right? Or we can say a niche describe not only what an organism does, right? What it's doing, but it also how it's interact with the living and abiotic factors, mean with the non-living factors in the environment. Then how an organism is interacting, it's not only that what organism is doing, right? It is not, niche is not only related to how an organism is living or how it's doing, but it also gives the detailed description about how an organism is interacting with the biotic factors and with the abiotic factors, mean with the living other living organism and with the non-living things. Its interaction with the living things and its interaction with the non-living things. A niche is the range of physical and biological condition in which a species lives in the way they obtain what it needs to survive and reproduce. So, as I told you in simple word, what are niches? Niches are the places in which the organism are living, obtaining food for survival and reproduction to reproduce. Right. So, a niche is a place, an area in which organisms are living, obtaining food for survival and reproduction. Understanding niches is important to understanding how organisms interact to form communities. If you look here, so if you are going to understand niches, it is important to understand how the organism interact to form a community. Interaction means that how they are interacting with the organism, right, with which they are living and non-living. The organism mean the biotic factors and the other things which are non-living things, the abiotic factors. So biotic factor, the interaction with the biotic factors and the interaction with the abiotic factors. Clear? Okay. The next point which we are going to discuss, it is about resources and the niches. Resources and the niches. The term resources can refer to any necessities of life such as water, nutrient, light, food, or space. Resources mean the requirement of life which is present in the niches, which is present in the surrounding. So it will contain water, it will be nutrient, it will be light, it will be food, or it will be shelter, means space, right? For plant, resources can include sunlight, water, and soil nutrients. If you are talking about plants, so for plants, the resources can be water, can be sunlight, and can be soil, and can be soil nutrient. All of which are essential to survival. For the survival of the plant, these things are important, essential, right? Necessary. Sunlight, water, soil, and soil nutrient. For animal, resources can include nesting, mean space to live, shelter, types of food, and place to feed, right? So for living things, for organism, they need food, they need shelter, and they need also food and shelter. That's it, right? Food contain what? Food contain the requirements of life, types of food, and shelter contain the place where they are going to feed. So these are the resources, right, which they are required for your life. The next point which we are going to discuss, it's about physical aspect of niches. Physical aspect of niches. What are the physical aspects of niches? Part of an organism niche involve the biotic factors that required for survival. Biotic factors mean living things. Most amphibians, for example, lose and absorb water through their skin. So if you look to most of the amphibians, so they are doing what? If you look to most of the amphibians, right? So, for example, lose and absorb water through their skin. So most of the amphibians, they lose and absorb water through their body surface, into their skin. So they must live in a moist place. So if they are doing to absorb or lose water with the help of their skin, to mean they need to live in what? They need to live in the moist place. If an area is too hot and dry or too cool for too long, most amphibians cannot survive. So if you take amphibian to any place, if it is too hot and too dry for long times, or if it is too cold for long times, so most of the amphibians, they cannot survive in these areas. They cannot survive, right? They will just die out. Clear? Okay. The next point which we are going to discuss, it is about biological aspect of niches. What are the biological aspect of niches? Biological aspects of organism niches or niche involve the biotic factors it required for survival, the living things it required for survival, right? Like what? when and how it reproduces, like for example, what is the time of reproduction and how it's going to reproduce, the way it is going to reproduce, the food it eats, so which type of foods they are going to eat, and the way in which it's obtained the food are all example of biological aspect of organism natures. So these things, like for example, how and where they are going to reproduce, and when the food, the type of the food they are going to eat, and the way how they are going to get the food, right? From which organism they are going to get the food. So all these comes in the circle of natures. Birds on Christmas Iceland, a small island in the Indian Ocean. For example, all live in the same habitat, but they prey on the fishes of different size and feed in the different places. So if you look to the birds on the Christmas land, right? What is the Christmas land? It is a small island. It's present on in the Indian Ocean. All the birds, they are living on the same habitat, but if you look to them, so they are preying on the fishes, right? But not on the same fishes, on the fishes of different size, and feed in a different places. So thus each species occupy a distinct niches. Each of that species occupy distinct niche from another. It's clear biological aspects of niches, physical aspect of niches, and resources in the niches. Okay, the next point which we are going to discuss, it's about the tolerance. Tolerance, the word or tolerance level. You can check on page number 99, the second topic, which is tolerance. Uh, this in simple words, what is the meaning of tolerance? How you are going to, or we can say the range of tolerance, the ability to survive, right? That is called tolerance level. The ability to survive, or every species. What is tolerance? The range of external condition within which a species can survive and reproduce. It is the range of external condition, not the internal, right? Mean in which we are living. Like about the temperature, about the food, about the water, about the sunlight, about the necessity of life, right? That in which range it is available. So the range of external condition within which a species can survive and reproduce, that is called tolerance, right? Now the two things are possible here. Tolerance level, either when it's increased, what will happen, or when it decreases, what will happen, right? So then the organism cannot survive. Every species has its own range of tolerance, the ability to survive and reproduce under a range of environmental circumstances, right? So, like for example, if you look to this diagram, right, range of environmental variables. So on one side we have low, on another side we have high. So when the tolerance level is low, what will happen, and when the tolerance level is high? On one side, it is shown the range of environmental variables, and on another side, it is shown the population. So lower limit of the factors, if it is the range of environmental variables are very low, so the population will be very less. You can see the graph, right? It will be 0. But with the passage of time, as the range of environmental condition as it's going to increase, so the population will also going to increase, right? About the optimum range, so optimum range is the maximum range of tolerance, right? Where there are more things are available for their survival. So the range of environmental condition, it will remain on the peak, right? The population will be more, right? So in the optimum range, the population will be more. If the optimum range, or we can say the lower limit of the factors, when it comes, when the tolerance or the external conditions comes low down, so it will reduce the population. And if it goes too much high, right, so it will also reduce the population, right? You can see in the diagram. When an environmental condition such as temperature extended in either direction beyond an organism optimum range, the organism experience stress. If the temperature go below zero, below the normal range, so the organism which is living in that condition, they will feel the stress because it must expend more energy to maintain a homeostasis and so has less energy left for the growth and reproduction. So I mean it is going to affect the organism in a negative way. Organism has an upper and lower limit of tolerance for every environmental factors. If you look to the organism, so they have what? They have lower and upper tolerance level. A species tolerance level for environmental condition, then it helps determine its address or habitat, a general place where an organism are going to. Clear? Tolerance level is clear to all of you? If you have any type of doubt in the tolerance level, in the niches, defining the niches and resources in the niches, physical aspect of the niches and biological aspect of the niches. So you can ask me, I can repeat and I can re-explain. Then we are moving to the next point, which is competition. You have 1 minute. You can revise it. If you have any type of doubt, any type of question, you can ask me. Okay. So you can see here there will be no survival, right? Just shown here. Okay. Next point, which we are going to discuss, it's about the competition. Page 100. Okay. How does competition shape the community? How does competition are going to shape the community? If you look at any, if you look at any community, you will probably find more than one kind of organism attempting to use various essential resources. Competition, right? If you look general just to the environment, right? So environment, we have a lot of organism, right? Uh, or if you just consider any community, so you will find more than one kind of organism, right? Like in the community in which we are living. So a lot of organisms are here. Human are also there. Besides human, there are a lot of other living organisms, right? Living things, being plants, animals, right? Microorganisms, all of them are there. And all of them, they are using various essential resources, right? When organisms attempt to use the same limited ecological resources in the same place at the same time, competition occurs. So if you look to the organism, most of the organisms which we are living in the same place, right? So they are using the different resources. But if you're talking about most of the time in the same species, right? So the same species are doing what? The same species are using the same resources. So if not the same species, if let's suppose two different species, three different species or different organisms in a place, in an area, right? If they are going to interact, if they are going to eat the same food, so then what will happen? Then competition will occur. In a forest, for example, plant roots compete for water and nutrients in the soil, right? If you look to the forest, so in the forest, we are having a lot of organisms, a lot of plants, right? And the roots of their plant, they are doing what? The root of their plants are doing what? They are competing for water, for nutrients, because they are different plants. So different plants, their roots have competition for taking water. So the same animal has, right? Animal such as the beryl in the figure you can see, right? On the left side of page number 100, down you can see, compete for resources such as food, mate, and place to live and raise their young one. So if you look to the battles, so they are competing for the resources such as food, such as place to live and raise their young one. Competition can occur both among members of the same species, known as intraspecific competition, and between members of different species, known as intraspecific competition. One is intra and one is inter. In intraspecific and interspecific competition. Two types. When the competitions occur between the two groups, this one is intra, right? When the competition is occur between the organism of the same species, this is called intra. And when the competition is occur between two different two different species, so then we are called inter, right? Intra between the same species and inter between different species. Intraspecific competition and interspecific competition, right? The example, the diagram you can see on your screen, right? Intraspecific competition between the member of the same species. When organisms attempt to use the same limited ecological resources in the same place at the same time, so it will lead to what? It will lead to competition. And what will happen? And competition will occur. Two types of competition we have: intraspecific and interspecific between the member of the same species, and interspecific between the member of the different species. So between the member of the same species, let's suppose there is an intra competition between human. Let's suppose we will take our society. Between a human, or between, we can say between the insect, one type of insect, right? Or we can say one type of animals like bird. So the competition of food, competition for survival, competition for plants, competition for energy from sunlight, competition for food from grasses. Let's suppose it's take place between the goats of an area, the goat of an area, or the sheep of an area, or the buffalo of an area. So that is intraspecific competition, right? Intraspecific because it is between one species, either only in the goat, either only in the population of the sheep, either only in the population of buffalo, or either only in the population of human. So they same species, right? But interspecific competition is the one in which the competition occur among all of them, like among goat, sheep, buffalo, and human. When they are competing for the same food resources, for the same survival resources, so then it will become what? Then it will become interspecific competition. And if it is between the one species, so it will become intraspecific competition. It's clear to all of you? Any type of doubt, you can ask me. Okay? Okay, fine. Competition exclusive principle. The diagram which you have, right? Competition exclusive principle. No two species can occupy exactly the same niches in exactly the same habitat at exactly the same time. So the competitive exclusive principle states that no two species, right? Not one species. No two species can occupy exactly the same niches and exactly the same habitat and at exactly the same time, right? The competitive exclusive principles, direct competition between different species, almost always produce a winner and a loser, right? If you revise back, no, we will study it in the evolution, right? The theory of life, the test for survival. Theory, test for survival, this we will study. So direct competition between different species almost always produce a winner and a loser. If there is a competition between two organisms, between three organisms, and between, right, whenever there we have competition, so there will be a winner and there will be a loser, right? And the losing species die out. When there is a winner, so the winner will survive, while the one which lost, it will die out, right? So if there is competition between different species or different organisms, so there will be loser and winner. The loser will not survive, the winner will survive. One series of experiments demonstrated this using two species of single-celled organism, right? So a series of experiments demonstrate this using two species of a single-celled organism. When the species were grown in a separate culture under the same condition, each survived, as you will see in the figure 4.6, you will see on the next slide, right? So they do what? They survived. And this one diagram you can see, right? If you look here, this one, which are alone, so this also survive alone, right? Separate. This dotted line represent the separate, right? Two organisms, Aurelia and Cadetum. These two, when they are grown in a separate culture, so both of them survive, right? But later, when both of them are grown in the same environment, in the same culture, so then the red one survive while the blue one, the other one, it's die out, right? So the winner survived, and the other one which we have, it didn't survive, so it just die out. But when two species were grown together in the same culture, one species outcompeted the other. The less competitive species did not survive. So the one which outcompeted the other, so it will survive, and the one which didn't compete, right, which are less competitive, so it died out in this competition, right? Experiment like this one, along with the observation in the nature, led to the discovery of an important ecological rule, the competitive exclusive principle, right? The competitive exclusive principle state that no two species can occupy exactly the same niches in exactly the same habitat at exactly the same time. This is the principle of what? This is the statement for the competitive exclusive principle. If two species attempt to occupy the same niches, one species will be better at the competing for limited resources and will eventually exclude the other species. So it will survive and the other will do what? The other will die out. As the result, if we look at the natural communities, we rarely find species whose niches overlap significantly. So one will survive and the other will die out. Right? So this was the lesson which we were supposed to study till today. We will stop here at this point. If you're having any type of doubt, any type of question, you can ask me. The next lesson, we will start dividing resources, right? Page 101, the last point. Do you have any type of doubt, any type of question, you can ask me.